Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. I have to move the keyboard because I don't have anywhere to put it. Frankly, things have changed. Space-wise. Anyway, it should be okay. Better than it was before. Anyway, I have to get the better video card working, and then it might be less jittery. But anyway, it's not bad. So this is good enough until I get a new computer, I believe. Well, it's better than bad. So, really horrible. It's not a really horrible video. I should be able to draw. It should work. So, update is the computer, fried, and so I have to use the backup. And the backup isn't, all that it needs to be. But anyway, close enough. So, the JPG Richie guy tried again asking Pyrrho questions, but look, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I mean, really, this can't really take place. You really can't talk about physics in these tiny little sound bites because the person can evade all the necessary follow-up questions, all of the contextual questions. Well, if that's true, then isn't this true? And if that, all of that kind of stuff gets evaded, so it really doesn't work. I mean, if there isn't somebody up to the challenge to actually discuss physics in the sense that I make an argument, they make their counter-argument, I make an argument, they make their counter-argument. And that kind of has to be done by somebody, taking a list of the facts and recognizing, conceding which ones have to be accepted, and going on from there. And there is none of that in this. So it just doesn't work. I wish it would work, but it just doesn't. And the JPG guy, you sort of have to say to Pyrrho, well, your answers don't really satisfy me, let alone him. I'm not even, I can't make anything out of this. What do you mean he doesn't show the burden is to show the paradox? So here's Pyrrho's response. Obviously the burden is on him to show the paradox. Well, I did show it. I mean, the theoretical paradox is shown in the sense that once you show this happens, A equals B, then you're stuck with B equal A, and you just show that that can lead to this, how do I prevent it? What mechanical thing? What obstacle is? So in the and I'll play the Lewin clip again. All right, a paradox I don't have an explanation for, let alone them. I have suggestions, but it seems quite paradoxical. We're supposed to be living in a universe where free energy is impossible, and it basically says maybe not, and it's just a fact. And I don't, to say I haven't shown it is silly. It's visually right there in the experiment. A certain amount of energy goes in, more energy comes out. It's visually right there in the experiment. You can't deny what he's saying. The experiment, it does the experiment, it shows it. What the hell haven't I shown? Anyway. And again, they haven't shown any of this stuff. Pyrrho says that the same two things that weigh the same can have different momentums. And and the obviously inverse, two things with different momentums will compress a spring the same amount. Have you shown any of that? No. Have you cited any evidence? No. I mean, you're telling me that the bowling ball goes 0.4 faster, that no human can throw it, 0.8 or 0.9 faster. I don't know. Doesn't make much sense to me. I mean, but using the same, but again, we don't want to change the amount of energy the person's using to throw the ball. But anyway, and he could do the math for his impossible situation that would allegedly occur. Yeah, I could do the math. I mean, I could show you Professor Lewin's math. The math overtly says, 100 momentum this way goes in. I don't add anything else, any other energy, and I get 130 out. What's to argue? It's free. The 30 part is free. Anyway, the math says so. That's the whole point. I'm arguing the math is insane. I'm saying that if it's either insane or, for 300 years everybody's missed this free energy formula, because what else could it be called? It's pretty free. I mean, you just have to create the mechanical device and it just produces it. It's better than a flywheel. A flywheel, can hold energy, store energy and stuff, but it doesn't make energy. This one makes it. Would allegedly, let's see, okay, and he could do the math for his impossible situation that would allegedly occur. So again, it's Professor Lewin's math. He has math saying this is what happens. I go in with 100 joules of energy, and I come out with, 130. Fact. Okay. And notice it doesn't occur, but all works out fantastic. So again, just what is that? You can't do anything with a mushy statement like that. How's it all work out fantastic? The whole argument is it doesn't work out fantastic at all. You're saying 0.6 of the energy is destroyed. There's nothing got hot. The springs we know work. I mean, I put two things, okay? I mean, one thing, twice the mass, and put the other half the mass on a spring. He says this spring accomplishes the task of pushing the object with its energy, and this one only 0.4 of the, we lose 0.6. We lose a third. We lose, 0.7, so we lose 0.3, something like that, of the energy is somehow lost. Springs, we know, don't lose energy. I mean, something can bounce back and forth between a spring for a very long time. And the argument is the spring is losing a tremendous amount of the energy somehow. I mean, I don't know, how can it know, if I hit it with a certain mass, it doesn't lose energy. I hit it with another mass, it does lose energy. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, with momentum helping us figure where the energy will go. So we already know this isn't that complicated. Every single object in, as far as we know in physics, only goes in one direction. Material objects only travel in one direction. They can't travel in any direction and all that kind of stuff. It can be any direction, but it's always one direction. The mass does the math. So 2 forces could act on it, 5 forces could act on it, but it's only going to travel in one direction. So all of this is just babble. There's a vector of how much of its momentum, and if something's coming in, going different directions, whatever goes out is going to total that. The input, the amount of energy going in has to equal the energy going out. That's the rule, and you're saying, it's not so much of a rule. It's some other thing. All right, and so with momentum helping us figure where energy will go in 3D space, and energy helping us know what's really conserved here. So again, all the physicists. So I should play the William Sumner. What's that his name? Sumner. Well, anyway, the old videos. He's kind of goofy, but I mean, he, from his perspective, everything you're saying is bullshit. So I mean. So there's no evidence is the bottom line. Like all of these simple experiments we don't have. Just dropping half the mass, stuff, and the spring somehow not working. We drop half the mass from 4 times as high because, that's how gravity works to get to twice the velocity. And so if we have the same momentum hitting, one spring will compress more than the other spring. Same momentum, different weight. So I'll make the weight argument clearer, just so everybody understands that that's what you're really saying. Okay, that 2 things that weigh exactly the same, I put them on a spring and they weigh different. Or 2 things that weigh different, I put them on the spring and they weigh the same. That's your argument. I mean, it's pretty clear. That's your argument. I think it's pretty clear. Okay, so it looks, the video looks a bit jittery, but it'll have to do. Anyway, all right, so we know that gravity does this thing that gives us weight, right? We know if we're in space and nothing's acting on us, no gravity, no nothing, and I put a scale next to me, I can't push on the scale. Okay, I put a scale under me, I can't push on the scale, I don't weigh anything. I certainly have mass. Okay, so my mass is real. It's just that it doesn't have any action tied to it. So we know that when you're on Earth, okay, and I put the scale here, and you weigh whatever, 150 pounds, we know that's because you now have motion. So if I wanted to simulate it in space, right, I mean, all I do is give you motion, okay, against an object. I make you move against an object, and you now will have weight. So I give you momentum, you know, relative to something. And if I give you momentum relative to something, that's going to be now you have weight. So it's artificial gravity. It's really just applying a velocity, and the velocity means, you know, you now have a weight. You know, so so you know that synthetic weight, all right, making weight synthetically, not gravitationally, is just a matter of making you move. If I make you move into an object in space, so I give you some momentum in space, right? You're in space, you're not doing nothing, and all I have to do is have an object that won't move, right? And I just push you into it. So I make this very large mass, you know, infinite mass, whatever. I make this a very, very large mass relative to you. And then I just give you a momentum, all right? I give you a velocity. You already have your mass. And when I give you a velocity, that will going to equal the same thing as gravity. It's going to be the same effect. The amount of velocity I give you, the force I give you, will equal the momentum I gave you. And you will weigh the same as you weigh on gravity if I give you the same force as gravity, 9.8 meters per second. If I give you that velocity and I crash you into a really big thing, a planet, without gravity, there's no gravitational influence. We're just saying you're crashing into something very heavy. Let's just say something 100 times heavier than you are. The spring is going to compress proportional to your momentum. So we already have the argument that springs work and springs measure momentum. They're not measuring something else. They're measuring momentum. So you can't just say springs measure kinetic energy. You have to kind of demonstrate it with, well, where's your drawing of that? Or where's your experiment showing that? Because we don't have any of that. We don't have a drawing or an experiment explaining how it's my kinetic energy in space. Because, no, it's your momentum in space. Momentum's all there is, and it's all that matters. Alright, so that sort of says it, right? There's no denying that momentum, okay, equals weight. Let me just use a W. Yeah, a funny W. I'll make a W that's deeper on one side than the other. That's the new symbol for weight. So that's the truth. I mean, what you weigh is a reflection of how much momentum you have that's different than the object you're measuring it against. So wherever you put the spring, it's just the difference between the momentum of this object versus the momentum of this object, and which amount is in conflict. So that's all. If this thing's moving, then there's the conflict. If you're moving towards it, then there's the conflict. But it's just going to measure the conflict between two different momentums, and it's going to show that. It's not going to show any kinetic energy. It's going to show momentum. It's going to weigh you. So momentum is weight. All right. So having established that as a premise, now I can play the Professor Lewin video, and we can just understand that he's basically creating weight. Okay? He's making things weigh more for free. And we know that weight, just like, we know that weight is what's moving the lever. We know that it's weight, that you want to pull a horse out of a whale, horsepower. It's weight you use to lift the horse, a counterbalance, a counterweight. There's always pressure that's really being exchanged, fundamentally. All right, so we will, I guess I can just pause, and see, I can't just pause easily anymore either, as I have to get the keyboard. I'll be back. All right, I'm back. So we'll play this again. I'm surprised that everybody else just doesn't pay any attention. Doesn't think this is worth even discussion. No conversation. No comments. No nothing. It just surprises me that you would think that this would create some sort of brain teaser. Okay, some sort of thing that, well, there's got to, what's the catch? There's got to be a catch somewhere. What is it? You know, and it's right in your face. So again, I'll just draw it real quick, just so it's clear what is what I would argue is the problem, and what we're seeing, overtly seeing. Okay, so you have an object, and you're just simply going to move it into an object that's twice as massive, and that's it. That's all you're going to do. And you're going to move this one with a weight, right? With a momentum. With the kinetic energy, doesn't really matter, but you're going to move it with energy, with motion, okay? And what's going to happen is the motion coming out is going to be higher. The mass to velocity numbers are clearly going to be increased. There's no denying that the relationship between those two numbers has changed. Now, like I said, the kinetic energy is, well, I didn't say it in this video, is the whole problem in a sense. Well, anyway, so you have 100 momentums, you know, mass times velocity. So you could say that's its weight, whatever, 100. It hits the object leaves with, you know, even though so it's half the mass, and now its velocity is going to be 2/3 of this velocity. So that's the problem, right? 2/3. It should be 1/2. You know, I mean, this is. Oh, sorry. This is. There's a lot to keep keep all the ducks in the right order. So this is twice the mass, obviously twice. So I've increased the mass by 2, and now the presumption is that all I'm going to get is half. Okay, the velocity. I can't get 2/3 of the velocity because I have twice the mass. There's no way to get 2/3 the velocity. Where does that make any sense? So the bottom line is I end up with 130 going this way. Now, because he's got springs, bent metal, on the carts, the argument is that what I'm going to get is a reflection going this way of 30, and that accounts for the extra 30 this way. But who put that in there? Who made that extra energy? Where did it come from? It can only come from the springs, and we didn't charge them ahead of time. We didn't compress them ahead of time. So we didn't have to do any work to compress them. So, so I'd argue, just automatically, just understand its weight. If I'm making something heavier without pushing on it, clearly I'm getting more capacity to do work out of it. You have to weigh something is to be able to do work. So if something weighs something, it's able to do work in the direction of its weight. All right. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, that's enough. So you're just gaining 1/3. So the argument is, the paradox is, I put a 4 weight after that, okay, and now I'm up to 160, and then I put an 8 weight, a 16 weight, no, an 8 weight, just have to double it, an 8 weight, okay, and I go up to 222 or something. I mean, I just keep increasing the momentum by just keep hitting it to have your object. And I just keep making more and more momentum. And frankly, that's paradoxical. That's free energy, frankly. Can't really get around it. Because that momentum will compress a spring that will give lighter things more energy. I mean, more, go, go, go. And so you just restart it all over again. Just keep creating more and more energy. So, yeah, let's just play it, and you can see for yourself, and then you can tell me how this isn't a free, the implications of this experiment are as free energy is available. You just have to do this, bang light things into heavy things.
So here is the card, which has twice the mass. It's important that I zero it, and now this one is going to come back. So you're going to see this one come in, gives you the time here. This one goes through here, gives you the time here. This one will come back, gives you the time here. Are they zero? Okay? You ready? Yeah. There we go.
Okay. So the result is, this is the initial velocity. This is the velocity of the twice of massive object. Right now, this velocity should be twice, 1/2. So this number should be twice as large as this number. Clearly not 246. Okay, so it's not the right number. It should be going much slower. So this heavy object now has more momentum than the object that went in. Clearly, in that one direction. Now we have the bonus of this extra, even, the 1/3 energy going back this way, but that's totally irrelevant to a free energy equation, right? I don't care about stuff going that way. I just care about what's going this way, because this way is what I'm going to collect the energy. So if I'm making more momentum in this direction, that's all I care about. More weight. So there really isn't anything. The rest is just doing the simple 1/3 times 2/3. Now, the only thing I could argue is this equation that predicts this result was by taking the momentum equation and the kinetic energy equation and combining those two equations to solve for the variables. And the argument I would make is those two equations, if you put them next to each other, you have to know one of them isn't the truth and one of them is the truth. One of them does equal the energy, and one of them doesn't equal the energy. So you've basically combined, a fly with a human being and made a monster. And it's a monstrous prediction that you can make free energy. And clearly he's showing us the experiment. I mean, apparently it works. But why wouldn't anybody capitalize on it then? Why are all these people, millions of views for free energy experiments that, that are so lame, in terms of the extra energy you get out is so tiny. This is 1/3, and it's so easy to multiply it into, to multiply it into many times what your original momentum is. So you can put 100 in, and after just 4 or 5 increases in the mass, you're already through 3 times as much momentum as you put into the machine. So how is this not illustrating a paradox? That's just, Pyrrho says I have to show it. Well, isn't this showing the paradox? What exactly is so complicated? If I can make this air track long enough, I just hit that. I let that heavy cart do the same thing the light cart did. I let it just crash into a cart twice as heavy. And I'll get the same results, the same number, the same proportions. And so now the heavier car has whatever the number is to 165 or 175 momentums, weights. Now weighs 175. And the next iteration will be 228 or whatever. I mean, you can't deny the fact that somehow I'm making more and more weight. I'm making more and more momentum. All right. But, to pretend that all of this fits together fantastically and it all makes sense, and, I can only swing 8-pound bowling balls, I can only get 0.4 velocity advantage. What? I mean, just going back to the simple argument, I'm sorry, you just can't imagine, I can't imagine how the spring can't make the light object go twice as fast. It's not in any experience I've had in real life. You put twice as light an object on a spring, compressed spring, and it's going to go twice as fast as it's something twice as heavy. And they're saying no, this 0.4 thing happens, and somehow 0.6 of the momentum is destroyed. It can't get out of the spring. The spring can't make it somehow. Even those springs, you can watch something going back and forth between springs, for a very, very long time. And the spring's conserving the energy. The only place you're losing it is in friction and air drag and stuff. But the frictions are, the springs are almost 99% efficient. The springs are very efficient. So how can they be losing all that energy? Momentum. Well, whatever. So, unfortunately, it's too bad they just didn't do the experiment as, let's see if it keeps doing that. Because guess what? If it keeps doing that, I can move the whole building eventually. I can create a tremendous amount of momentum, a tremendous amount of energy, weight, pressure in a direction, by just increasing, doubling the masses. It's probably enough, yeah. Okay. I mean, he concedes, in a sense, the paradox. So, let me go right after the numbers, because then he talks about a tennis ball. I'll give you a sleepless night, he says.
Wake. Here is the wall.
Okay. Oh, damn it. Fucking bullshit. Scientists.
All that comes in with a certain mass m, and it has a certain velocity v, whatever that is. And that, of course, there's always some loss of kinetic energy. But it's so little that it doesn't show up in these measurements.
Yes. So again, he always starts talking about kinetic energy after he's done out the whole explanation. But you can't mix the two and make any sense out of that experiment.
Now, I want you to have a sleepless night. I want you to think about the following. And if you can't solve it before the night is over, then I really think you should lie awake.
So he's basically talking about it's paradoxical.
Here's the wall. Here's a tennis ball that comes in with a certain mass m, and it has a certain velocity v, whatever that is. It's a nearly elastic collision, and it bounces back from the wall. And we all know that if it's a nearly elastic collision, then it comes back with the same velocity. Kinetic energy is conserved. All the kinetic energy is in the tennis ball. Nothing is in the wall. The wall has an infinitely large mass. But the momentum of this...
this is the dodge, right? This is almost saying the same thing, because this is a spring again. So that's something I should have pointed out. The bent metal spring was, Professor Lewin said, this is going to be a kinetic interaction, and elastic. And, the metal things are already, from a lot of people's standards, 100% elastic, okay, the steel or the aluminum that the little carts are made out of. So why do they need to have springs on them? They're already supposed to be elastic, nearly 100% elastic. So why are there springs on them? What are the springs doing? And you can just say the tennis ball is the same thing. The tennis ball is a spring. Its whole body is a spring. You might as well look at the tennis ball as if it's a spring. And what is he doing? I'm throwing a spring at the wall. He's not really throwing a solid object at the wall. This isn't going to be an elastic interaction in any sense, really, because he's throwing a spring. He's, it's clearly mushy. Anyway, but obviously it's the compression of the ball that stores the energy that pushes the ball away from the wall. I would argue clearly.
Tennis ball has changed by an amount 2mv. That momentum must be in the wall. It's non-negotiable because momentum must be conserved. So now here you see.
So again, he says it. Momentum must be conserved. Except if you keep making these kind of arguments, you're going to be stuck. Well, why doesn't Pyrrho think so? Because clearly Pyrrho doesn't think momentum has to be conserved. Two different things with different weights, different pressures, different momentums, different synthetic velocities to mass ratios will weigh the same on the spring somehow. And things with the same can weigh different. I don't know. How does that make any sense to anybody? How can the two things with the same weight weigh different?
In front of your eyes a case that the wall has momentum, but it has no kinetic energy. Can you understand that? Can you reconcile that? Can you show me math?
Well, I'm just saying he won't show us that the wall has momentum, in the sense he's not going to show us the wall moving. So, but the truth is the movement is tiny and it's reflecting inside the object until it gets out. If it can't release to the environment, it has to reflect. That's why the spring oscillates. If it can't get rid of the energy, it just has to reflect it. It can't do anything with it. It has to lose it somewhere. So if a building doesn't have anything to push on, to give velocity to, or enough stuff to give velocity to, then it'll just oscillate. And obviously if it's oscillating, you can understand that the tennis ball sits there, the reflection happens, and it initiates the release of the tennis ball, the reflection. So there's two things acting on the ball. The ball's first compressed, created its own spring compression, and it's pushed on the wall, no doubt about it, and it's caused a vibration in the wall that's going to come back. But anyway, I'm just saying, I don't understand how people who like logic and reasoning wouldn't be in some way interested in finding resolution to what seems quite obviously puzzling. Okay, puzzling. A puzzling fact. If Professor Lewin's experiment isn't in some way flawed, there isn't a problem somewhere on that air track, somewhere in this mechanism, this is free energy. And somehow no one's figured it out. I mean, we're talking about billions of views for free energy videos. Obviously, it's very depressing to look at, but if you type free energy searches, you'll see videos that are just obvious garbage, shyster nonsense. Millions of views. Merely because they're suggesting there's free energy. Not because they're proving it. And here we have an experiment that proves it. You know, even this video doesn't, I mean, you should put in here the free energy forever video, you know, and get 1 million views. Because it's pretty much saying it. I don't say how, it's not saying it. Just keep putting, put 4 pounds here, put 8 pounds here, put 16 pounds here, and by the time you get to the end, you've got 3 times the momentum. And 3 times the momentum is 3 times the weight, which means 3 times the horsepower, which means blah, 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 blah. Okay. That's all I can do. I can only attempt to reason with this audience. I can't do anything else. That's all I got. So, close enough to a normal video, I would hope. And so, we'll hope to get back to some normalcy in some way or another. Anyway, till the next time and such. That didn't make